Welcome to Loving Me Before I Love You with Tammy Nicole, the podcast dedicated to you loving and putting yourself first. Others have come first in your life for years, and you know it's time for that to change. You're about to be empowered to set healthy boundaries, confidently have hard conversations, unapologetically put yourself first, and live the peaceful life you deserve. Remember, self-love is essential, and loving yourself sets the stage for every other love in your life. So get ready to embrace self-love like never before with your host, Coach Tammy Nicole.
Hello, it is Transformation Tuesday over at Loving Me Before I Love You. You guys know in the month of June, we do celebrate Father's Day, but a lot of times it is always shadowed by single mothers who are trying to take the shine. And this month, I said I wasn't doing that. I said this month, I'm going to dedicate it all to dads, good, bad, and ugly. So what do I mean by that? We're going to talk about the good parts of fatherhood. We're going to talk about the bad parts of fatherhood. We're going to talk about not having a father around and still growing up to be a successful man. We're going to talk about it all. And today is the day we talk about growing up fatherless and how you can overcome that impact. I do have a special guest with me today. He is a therapist. He's a life coach, and he is a dad. So we are going to talk all things about how the impact of not having his father being around has shaped his own journey into fatherhood and his journey into manhood. I have none other than he goes by. I mean, y'all gotta get with his name, his tagline, because I done called him everything under the sun but his right name. But he goes by my big black therapist, Damani. Welcome to the show, Damani.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Greetings, people out there. My name is Damani Anderson, licensed marriage and family therapist associate, but branded as my big black therapist. Why? Because I'm 6'9" and I'm black. That's pretty much it.
Did you say 6'9"?
I'm 6'9" and I'm black. And so the real reason behind it was I felt God put this on me because the challenge of implicit biases. A lot of times for growing up, I felt as if I had to meet a mold of everybody. I felt as if I had to be what everybody wanted me to be. I had to play sports. I had to do something to use my body. And it got to a point where I would lie and tell people that, oh, yeah, I played sports. I did this and that because I wanted to feel accepted. But once I got into this space of therapy and was received my licensure to begin, I felt called to stand on who I am. Be authentic, be yourself. And that's the whole title of the brand, is learning how to move in your authenticity and not allow the community and other people to standardize who you should be and what you should look like. When you see me, you see somebody that's big and black. You already saying it in your head. But for some reason, when people translate it out loud, that's when it becomes a problem. Or that's when they have expectations of you to use your body in order to do things versus using your mind or something else. So, I stand on the title of my big black therapist just so we can get the wheels spinning and start challenging our own implicit biases in life.
Love it. Love it. Because, over here, all we talk about is self-love and being you and being authentic and genuinely, walking this walk called life, and stop being a people pleaser because you can't live your life according to other people's standards. You got to create your own. So I agree 100%. And to hear it come from a man makes me even more happy. Most of the time, my audience is geared towards women as a whole because I coach women that's what I do. I coach them in self-love. But to have a man stand on business on loving himself authentically says a whole lot.
Yes.
Which, thank you. Brings us to our topic, because we don't talk to men often. We don't get their real feelings and thoughts on subject matters as we should. I think men are kind of like, I don't want to say they shut out, but we do a lot more talking about them versus talking to them about their own circumstances. And so we talk to women a lot about having daddy issues and growing up fatherless, and how they, grow up and try to find daddy in a man, and, or they grow up and can't be soft because they're dogmatic, because they didn't have a man in their life to show them, that they can be protected and cared for. They was just abandoned, all of those things, right? But we don't talk to men and say, well, how was it growing up without your dad and having to become who he is as a man? Not necessarily him, period, but just being a man without that real male guidance from him.
That's a very good statement, very good introduction. To answer that or to dig into that, I mean, a lot of times, especially in society, there's a space in which men aren't given the opportunity to express themselves. Mm-hmm. We're not afforded the opportunity to be authentic, because when the first time we cry and hurt ourselves, someone tells us stop being like a little girl. Yep. Stop crying. Little girls cry. You're acting like a sissy. All of these different taglines that we get, the negative feedback that we get from a natural emotion. Yeah. Because fear, crying, sadness, these are all natural emotions that come from us that should exude out of us as a place to breathe and process your feelings. But because society is big on stoicism and alpha male energy and all of these different things, as boys, we are taught to hold it in. We are taught to the only way that we can express it is through aggression. Mm-hmm. So, go play a sport, get it off your chest, go box, go fight, do something else, joke, laugh it off. Like, these are all the different ways that we are able to express it instead of having honest conversations about what we're feeling. So for me growing up, without my father in my life, I was numb to it. I translated it into something else. I focused on other things, and I act as if it didn't affect me. And I'm gonna tell you when it really hit me. My mother passed away when I was 21, and during the death of I'm sorry,
mine did too when I was 21. Oh, wow. Like that's when I was like.
Yeah. When I was 21, she actually passed a week before her 41st birthday. And I held on to that, and I began to try to seek love and affection through other things, through drugs, through relations with other women, through staying up, partying, all of these different spaces. And I got into a relationship with my now wife, and we were in it for a couple of years. And we came to a point where we were having a real conversation, and I blurted out that I felt, I finally expressed, like, I felt lonely. I felt like my mom left me. I felt like my dad didn't want me. I felt like I was the only person in this world and nobody cares about me. Mind you, this is in a space where, I was raised by my grandparents. My uncle took care of me as well through high school and college. I grew up in the church where I had like young adult ministers and all these different role models in my life. But yet the one who gave birth to me was the one that had the most impact. And it didn't hit that switch until 23, 24. And it was at that moment that I realized, like, oh, this has had a deep impact in my life. Yeah. And in retrospect, I started to look back at some of my behaviors, some of the patterns, some of the ways that I would show up in relationships. And I recognized that, him not being there always made me feel as if I had to be there. I had to be that for everybody else. Especially in combination with, even though my mom passed away, I didn't live with my mother. My mother lived up in D.C. I'm originally from Georgia. And my mother had me when she was 20 going on 21. And my grandparents said, hey, let them stay down here until you get yourself situated. And then we'll, move them up there with you. But it never happened. We kind of got into a more stable space with my grandparents. So I stayed down here, but I would visit my mom during the summers. And at that age of 21, I was in college, and I was at the brink where me and my mom are finally having a relationship, like a real mother-son connection. Like, she's talking to me about life, relationships, and I'm really like being able to embark on this new chapter of life. And now she's gone. And then, so for me, in my mind, I feel like the only connect that I had to my grandparents who raised me, my uncle who raised me, all of those people was through my mom. And now that she's gone, I'm by myself.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of internalized it. So the impact of a father's presence in your life could have so many different ways of being detrimental into your thought patterns, into the way that you seek relationships, the way that you handle trauma, all of these different things. And, sitting on the other side of the desk now as a therapist, I see and connect the dots on how that has an impact in so many people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When you were growing up, though, when you had your grandfather there to kind of like show you manhood, do you feel like you still fostered manhood after him and after your uncles who were actually physically present? Or do you feel like you really showed up more like the characteristics, DNA deposited things that your dad actually provided?
No, it was my grandparents and my uncle. They had the biggest impact in fostering who I am today. We grew up, in the church, and my grandfather was the elder of the congregation. I sing as well, so I was always on the praise team and in the choir growing up, and those roots were really embedded into me. But at the same time, there was I still felt a disconnect. Internally, I still never felt completely whole. And, I believe, but I, just to talk about community and the significance of community, recognizing for those who may be growing up fatherless now, like recognizing the community that you have and taking full advantage of those who are in your life, can be very beneficial in helping shaping you who I was. Because, if it wasn't for their upbringing, I personally could not have done what I've done. So, and, we talked about this earlier, but I want to, let people know, like, I was able to reach out to my father when I was 30. It was Father's Day. It was literally Father's Day about 6 years ago. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I looked him up on Facebook and I sent him a message saying that, I forgive you. And if you ever want to have a relationship, I'm here. And if it wasn't for my upbringing, if it wasn't for me having that space where I finally realized that God put those men in my life to help me be who I am today. At that point, I was married. I was living in Dallas, Texas. And, I was making a decent living and I was good. So I needed to let go of that hurt. I needed to let go of the pain and what I kept holding on to, and which was that frustration of my dad not being in my life. When I took a step back and recognized the man that I am today was because of the people that God put in my life, then I can provide grace to give him an opportunity to be there, to give an opportunity to hear his side, and to, be able to possibly understand the reasons behind it. So, just, I kind of went all the way around, but to answer your question, like, their impact had a tremendous hold on who I am today and the way that I foster myself and the way that I hold myself and carry myself moving forward.
So now that you've had a relationship with your bio dad for the last 6 years, do you see any of him in you, though?
Yeah, he has some mannerisms. He bullheaded like me sometimes. His wife
You're
told me.
bullheaded like him?
I'm sorry, yeah. Bullheaded like him. I can see that. But there are some spaces where, I definitely recognize myself in him. He's a jovial person. He can be very social. And I get that, because I'm that way as well. But then also I can be very like docile and just quiet. And some of those mannerisms I definitely see that he has that I picked up on through DNA, because it wasn't by him, being there with me. So there are.
Which is my point, because DNA is real.
Absolutely.
DNA is so real. Like, I just think about like my own children, and I'm a divorcee and their dad's not in the house. but I lived with their dad before they were ever born for a long time. I was married to him. So I know his mannerisms and all of these things, and I see it in them, and they're not even around him often enough to pick it up. You know what I mean? You know, you pick up other people's stuff. It's like they're not even around him to pick it up, and I see it. And I'd be like, oh, DNA is real.
Yeah, everything, all things get passed down, even trauma. Like traumatic events can be passed down through DNA. There was a study that was done through I think they utilized hamsters. I think it was like called the cherry blossom study. But basically, what they did was they put hamsters in a cage, and every time they would spray the smell of cherry blossoms, and every time they would do that, they would shock the hamsters. So for over a course of time, every time that cherry blossom was smelled, they would shock the hamsters, shock the hamsters, shock the hamsters. And then those hamsters mated and had children. And when the smell came around, they were able, their levels were spiked. And I mean, it traced it down for like 5 or 6 generations of like a traumatic event that happened to a hamster that you don't even know. But because that traumatic event happened to that animal, it was traced back 5 to 6 generations. They talk about even with the Holocaust victims, it was a cell that stores fat, and because during that season in which they were eating and they had a large amount of famine, when they actually had children, their children would store fat differently, and causing them to be heavier, causing them to have more health issues, because during that time when they were conceived, food was rationed. And so I say all that to say, like, traumatic experiences continue to be passed down. I mean, we look at our community, we look at the things that our community are going through. It still can be traced back to slavery. It can still be traced back to the traumatic events that happened there. So schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, all of those things can be translated through DNA.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is why, even like for myself, like when I'm out coaching women, because my goal is to help break generational trauma, right? Through the power of self-love is the goal. You have to start somewhere, right? You've already had your kids. You can't not have them, like, fix yourself and send them back and bring them back out, but you can start creating positive reinforcement of having no trauma, right? Like, let's kind of like erase it from the standpoint of not recreating new ones.
Absolutely.
So I 100% get it. What emotional struggles did you face, and how did you learn to navigate them?
One of the emotions was I struggle with the effect of expressing emotions. Like, my mom passing was the very first time that I saw my grandmother, my uncle, and my father cry. Like I said before, I was 21. I've never seen, our family ever get distraught about anything. And her passing, I struggled. Like, a week later, I was in school. Because like I said before, I was in school. I took off for a week to go get her belongings. I had to sign death certificates. I had to do all of these different things, pick up her remains and all of that, move all her stuff out. And I was back in school a week later, and I remember being frustrated because I was still crying. I was still upset because I didn't know how to process my emotions. I was frustrated at the fact that I was still mourning. And it wasn't until a good friend of mine told me, like, your mother deserves grief. Your mother deserves you to cry over her. Like, that's your mom. Like, that's not a random person on the street. That's the mother. That's the person that gave birth to you.
Right.
So when it comes down to, my struggles, like, I struggled with, being expressive. I struggled with relationships with men. I didn't know how to have relationships with men. I didn't know what they really looked like. Like, we, can talk loosely, but other than that, I struggle with that. Struggle with relationships with women. Just being able to learn how to, show that appreciation and what I wouldn't say that I put my heart on my sleeve. Like, I think with me, I was so big on trying to be that for everybody that I neglected myself because of the fact that, I in my mind felt as if my parents didn't want me
And you were
because of the
searching for
situation.
that acceptance.
Yes. So I would put my heart on my sleeve and I would pour into others. And it wasn't for the sake of loving and caring. It was so I could feel good.
Yeah.
That good guy syndrome where, I'm doing all this stuff, but it's from an unrighteous spirit because it's not
Genuine.
because I care. It's because I want the praise and I want to be looked at as this person. I want to be the perfect person for everybody. So I struggle with that. I struggle with expressing my emotions about how I feel about certain things. I'm always been a great listener. I'm great at creating a space for everybody, but I struggled at being transparent about what I dealt with internally and how I felt. And then I mentioned earlier, I struggle with authenticity, being my authentic self. I felt as if I had to meet the mold of everybody so everybody could like me. Because I didn't know how to, have that opportunity of just saying, hey, this is who I am. And, I'm accepted by everybody. It doesn't matter if I'm accepted by everybody. I'm accepted by myself. But because I felt like I wasn't accepted by my father and my mother, I struggled with that. And that's why, I let all my clients know the very first relationship that you have is with your mother and father, whether they're there or not. And that has an impact on your life tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
You can, and I'm a living example. I had my grandparents there that loved and cared for me and that poured in me in that sacrifice. When I got to high school, I had my uncle and my aunt there that poured in me, that loved me, that sacrificed. They took me on when my uncle was like 24, 25. I remember when I turned 24, 25, I said, I thank you because ain't no way that I would have ever taken on a child, a full grown 6'5" big body boy at that age. But that was love and sacrifice. But during that season, because my first two relationships, I didn't feel that fully. I struggled. I struggled with it, regardless of all the support system I had.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think a lot of times as parents, right? Because my next set of questions is going down when you became a father and how that your fatherless, experience impact your fatherhood as a parent. But when we become parents, because there's no real rule book, right? Now, granted, God gave us the Bible and he taught us everything within it. And if we glean to it, we can learn from it for every aspect of our life. But there's no real written handbook sitting out here for us to be a parent. You got rules, lessons, tests, and everything to drive a car. You got rules, lessons, tests, to graduate high school. Like you just got a lot of things that are kind of like here to kind of guide you for different areas of life. But parenthood is not it. It's not available. It's a wing it. It's a do what your mama did to you. It's a do what you see that you think is good from TV. It's, a lot of those things are based upon what you decide based upon how you feel in the moment on how you parent. And so as we are growing, even though we come from probably non-ideal situations from parenting, how did you decide how to parent your own children, how to be a father to your own children, and what was that impact like?
So the way that I decided to parent, I knew one thing that I was going to be there. I'm going to be in my children's life. I'm going to marry my wife. I'm going to make my wife. And we're going to have a community. We're going to have, I was very intentional about that. And, like I said, after my mom passed, I went through a season of trying to feel that love. And I stopped, rededicated my life back to God. And I said, the next woman that you bring in my life, God, please allow that to be my wife. And that's when I met my wife. And the way that I fostered that relationship was like no other. Even in retrospect, I told her, I said, I don't know what, that had to be all the Holy Spirit, because ain't no way that it just didn't make sense. Like I was just like, the way that I was moving, the way that I was very intentional about the conversations that we were having. I was very intentional about the way that we presented ourselves, about me being open and honest about my feelings. Like it was very, very, very structured through the Holy Spirit. And the reason for this is because I was like, I want this to be my life partner, and I want to ensure that the children that we raise grow up in a space that's loved, filled with respect, honor, and uplift. Like, those are some of the words that we have right now sitting in our house, above our, right in our house. Like, that's what this house is made of. Love, respect, and uplift. Like, we're going to make sure that we do these things. And I knew that a lot of times society's, once I get married, I'm going to be X, Y, and Z. That's not how that works. That's not reality. You're not going to be a faithful man once you get married. You're not going to be a faithful woman. You're not going to be like, there's not a switch. So I knew that I had to start here and work on this here so that when we get to that space, when those children come, we've already got a relationship. Prior to us getting pregnant, I said, hey, I'm prioritizing you. When we found out we having a baby, I said, hey, we're going to do date nights. We're going to do monthly check-ins. We're going to do all of these things. When this child comes, I'm prioritizing you first. Like, I let that be known very, very early. When the child came, that's what I did. I said, hey, I'm checking on you. As much as I wanted to love on my baby, and she cried for the 5th time after she'd been fed, burped, and slept, I said, no. What do you need, baby? What do you need? She's fine. We've already checked her diaper. We already did everything. Let's go over here and sit down. Let's connect. Like, I was very, very intentional about ensuring that our relationship is solid, because that foundation is what's going to help my children, my 2 girls. That's what's going to help them. It's not going to be, me pouring in and giving them everything that I didn't have, and me trying to, be this and be that. Like, that's not how that works. So I knew that one thing that I saw in my house growing up was stability. My uncle has been married to, my aunt for I'm 37, so it's 26 years, I think. Going on 30, my grandparents, they were married for 50 years before my grandfather passed away. I knew that, one of the tenets that we need to be is ensuring that we're staying together. Now, the next tenet is making sure that we have a fruitful relationship. Making sure, there were certain things that I saw in my grandparents' relationship. There were certain things I saw in my aunt and uncle relationship that I pulled from, but then also say, hey, I'm going to make sure I do this more. I'm going to make sure I be that more. Like, I was very, very intentional about how I foster my relationship with my wife so that I can be that for my children. And, even now, like, my wife, she's a medical doctor. And there was a season when our first child was born, I decided to stay home. That was a whole nother space of being a stay-at-home dad. I already had to wrestle with, knowing that my wife is going to make more money than me for a good amount of time. She's, a medical doctor. They make more money. I've graduated with a degree in social work. I became a therapist. Let's just be honest. Those salaries are different. But, in time, I trust God, and whatever he has for me, he has for me. But I already had to grasp the concept that I wasn't going to make as much as her before we got married. But now I'm in a space of, now I'm not making any income. And now I have to ensure that, my masculinity, and I feel confident in who I am as a man, as a husband, without, bringing in home any money. But because I fostered that relationship with my wife first, because we started that, that journey 8 years ago, 5 years prior to getting married, she was able to pour into me, and she began to show me and reiterate that I am more than just financial responsibility. I'm more than just a paycheck. And Absolutely. That drove me to be able to be more present with my girls. I was there for both of their first steps. I was there for both of their first words. I was there for, I changed all, diapers. I was there, and I was so happy, and I was so blessed to be that present in their life, and continuing to be present in their life. So, once again, intentionality from day one. Before I met my wife, I was very intentional about what I wanted from God. He was very intentional about providing it for me. So therefore, when he gave it to me, I utilized it in the space to prepare for myself for who I am today. And I got my babies right up here too. We was featured in the newspaper. So.
Great steward. Great steward.
Wow, today's episode is a good one. I know you're enjoying it, and we'll get back to it shortly. Just wanted to take a quick break to let you know that Tammy would love for you to share any questions, comments, or topic ideas you have with her. All you have to do is send them to her in an email to podcast@IamTammyNicole.com. Thank you, and without further ado, let's get back into today's show.
So, because the other thing is too, they're going to grow up and go. So you do have to nurture the relationship with your wife, period.
Absolutely.
I think that's why a lot of divorces, outside of financial and infidelity, the other reason is lack of connectivity when you have kids. It's like people put their kids first and the spouse becomes secondary. And then you raise and nurture these kids for 18 plus years. And now that they're gone, you don't know who the heck your spouse is because you didn't spend no time with them during those 18 years or a little more, depending on how many kids you had,
Absolutely.
of just raising kids. And
Absolutely.
so you definitely have to keep that connection in place. And I love that you were able to start it before it started,
Absolutely.
like put a system in place and keep it going. Cause it's super important. Like, I don't think we value it. And that becomes a part of that fatherhood portion too. You know what I mean? Like, yes, you're a daddy to these kids, but you were a husband first. You were a partner first. And, what are you teaching them?
Absolutely. Because they see everything they see.
And kids do what they see, not what you say.
Exactly. All day. I could tell my daughter not to. I could tell my daughter to drink water all day, but if she don't ever see me pick up a glass, why would she? Daddy, you don't value that. Then what am I going to say then?
Right. Exactly. My sister. I was telling my sister that your kids do what they see, not what you say, and it sounds good, right? It sounds like a real good cliche little phrase. And I said, no, I'm for real. You know what I mean? Like, no, I'm not like joking. I'm so serious. And so she started thinking about the things that she complained about that her kids do. And I say, now I'm going to show you where you do all of those things you complain that they complain. You complain that they do it and you don't like it, but I'm about to show you that you do it and they do it because they see you do it.
Absolutely.
And we went through the list and it was so mind blowing to her that she was like, wait, I need to change this. I said, exactly. So if you want them to change, you got to change.
Absolutely.
And so she did the simplest thing to see that it worked in order, because, we all are testers. Kids are testers. We are testers too as adults. She had to test it to see if it was going to really do something. It was as simple as putting her shoes up on the shoe rack when walking in the house, to put all the shoes on the shoe rack. She said she would have the shoes would be all over the floor, not on the rack. Rack empty, all the shoes on the floor in a disarray. She complaining, but her shoes was in the mix too. She said she decided that's going to be her tester zone. So she put her shoes up on the rack every day. And sure enough, there was no shoes on the floor.
There it is.
And she said, I can't believe this. So what she do, the very next day that she paid attention that had happened over a consecutive amount of days, she decided to not put her shoes on the rack. And lo and behold, their shoes were not on the rack right along with her. And she was like, now that is something that I had never seen before. And I said, I'm telling you, we think that children are learning by what we teach them verbally, when the reality is they're learning by what you do, period. Like everything that you do. When I wrote my first book, my daughter saw me writing a book, and what did she do? Write one right behind me. She was 7 years old. And she said, oh, you writing a book? And I was like, yeah. She said, I want to write a book. I said, write one. Nobody's stopping you. And she did it. And it was like to the point that now it's a competition. Mom, how many books you got out? Oh, I got 3. I got to catch up. You know what I mean? Like, it's literally because she's watching what I do. And I think that when you talk about fatherhood and you talk about the father being gone or missing, you don't get that opportunity to watch what he does in order for you to become, the essence of you. Now, when you look at that, or when you talk about that aspect, how do you feel in reference to young boys and men that have grown up fatherless, as far as like not having an actual father figure? Because I know we talked about your grandfather and your uncle being like staples in your life, but there are a lot of young men and grown men who don't have it. They don't have it. All they have is the TV.
Yeah. So yeah, talking with any young men out there like that, the one thing that I encourage, especially if they come across my desk, is processing what you believe fatherhood and manhood looks like. Processing it. Go back and think about, what do you see yourself? What do you want your life to look like? What do you see yourself as? And how would you want to show up for your children? And, I start there and then look for men who are in that space of what you want. Look for brothers, look for figures. It could be somebody on TV. It could be somebody, up the street. It could be somebody at your church. It could be your barber, whomever. Like, really process, like, what do I want my lifestyle to look like? And what type of father would I want to be for my children? My kids, when my father was in my life, I want to be with my dad. Who do you remember seeing, walk around with their kids all the time? Oh, dang, Mr. Jeffrey, I always walk around. What does Mr. Jeffrey do? Oh, Mr. Jeffrey, da, 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 da. Okay, go have a conversation with Mr. Jeffrey. The thing about it is, there are men there. It's just that we have to be very cognizant of who they are. And sometimes, especially because we get so focused on the fact that the world, society, focuses on the negative so much that we don't take time to look at the opportunities or the positive that might be around. That man might be your neighbor for 15 years, and because you're still, sad about your dad not being there, you didn't recognize that Mr. Jeffrey helped you ride your first bike. Mr. Jeffrey helped you do this. He's outside working on his car, and that's those you're looking at like, dang man, I wish my dad was doing all that. You got him right there, and sometimes taking that step could be helpful. Letting your parent know, whoever your parent know, let them know that you're looking for, that you want a male figure in your life. And these are once again, these are easier things said than done, because at the end of the day, that takes the level of vulnerability that's scary. Vulnerability is scary. Being open about how you're feeling, what you're dealing with, what your process is a scary space to be in. And a lot of times we may struggle with that growing up, but you got to take that first step, because nobody can help you if they don't know. Like, I can't, I can only speculate. And looking for spaces that have the opportunity for for fathers to be there, for men to be there, could always be a good space to also go with as well. There's different, like Kappa leagues and different spaces where there are mentor programs. There's different mentor programs out there that foster and hold spaces for young men to be able to get some tools. There's different, areas that you can go to. School, it might be a teacher, somewhere, you can find that mode. But by asking yourself, what do I learn about, what have I learned about fatherhood? And also, what type of father do I want to be? Starting with those two questions, and then finding someone who's emulating that, who's showing that, could be a very first step towards finding a person to model yourself after and possibly connect with.
Very good. Very good. A few months ago, my son turned 16 in February, and for his birthday, I threw him an all-men mentor brunch. I, being that I'm raising him predominantly by myself. His father is still in his life and available because he was actually present. But we did that. We literally sat down and talked about which men in around his world that he admires, that he would glean from, that he would listen to. And we came up with 10 men, and I reached out to them and I say, hey, he's about to enter that manhood status. 16 is the start. It's not it. It's the start. And I want to do this and that for him. You know, can you participate? And of course, one, they shocked that somebody even wants to do something of this caliber. But then two, they were like, heck yeah, let's do it, you know? and so we did that. Rented out a private space at a restaurant. They ate, they fellowship, no women allowed, including myself, you know, him plus a few of his friends that are on his same level. Because my thing is, you can't get something they're not getting and they be connected to you. I can't do it. So I talked to their mamas and I said, let me tell you, this is what we're doing. And if they're going to be connected, they're going to have to be connected.
I like that.
So they did it. The boys loved it. And it was a very great exchange. So you saying, go look for what you want. It can come from multiple people. It doesn't have to come from just one. You can like this one thing about this man, and you can like something. You can like his work ethic. You can like his fatherhood. You can love, you know, the way that this person loves on his wife. You can love, you know, there could be different aspects of different men that you love to become the one man that you want to do all inclusive. And so definitely having a mentor is super, super important.
Absolutely. I love that concept. I'm going to steal it. I don't know how, but I'm going to steal it. It's been
I'm going to do it for my
recorded.
daughter too. So don't worry. The girls get it too. But yeah.
That's a beautiful, yeah, I like that. I like that concept. Even with, you know, me being present in my children's lives, still doing that.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
what you said is very key. Like fatherhood or growing up, adulthood, you pick it up from everybody that you impact. It's not just solely your mother, solely your father, but even having those conversations, like, you know, what's another man that you listen to? What's another woman that you listen to? Who do you appreciate? What style? Who style you like? What, like being able to really just, regardless of, you know, impact or regardless of how often you're in your children or not, having that space and doing that for them is very good, because it takes a village. And the thing about our community is that we've lost a village. We've lost a village due to, I'm not going to go into another podcast because that's a whole other topic. But overall, we lost the village. And in order to get the village back, we have to be very intentional once again, and having that intentionality starting with our children and allowing them to see that, allowing them to really recognize in one room, like, wow, these are all the traits that I pick up on. These are all the things that I love about myself, that I love about each individual. And they are here for me in this space, pouring into me. So when Mama may not, you know, Lord willing, we stay on this earth until we can. But any event that God calls us, they already have community. They already know who to go to. They already know who to call into. And having that, ensuring we take a picture and all of that. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I love that.
We did that. We took pictures. I actually had them write notes to him on these papers that I'm going to put into a book alongside with the picture of him and them collectively, so that he can have for the rest of his life. He going through something, he can't pick up the phone and call somebody. He can read what they said to him and how they poured into him right there on paper.
That is beautiful.
I also did them like a plaque, like a mentor plaque that was like words about mentorship, and they were from him to them, personalize their names and stuff, so that when they see it, they're reminded of him, that if they haven't spoke to him, to reach out to him, check on him, see how things are going, because it's a commitment that you technically made when you signed up to be a part of the process.
And also that just feels, as a mentor, that allows you to feel loved and appreciated, because once again, as men, we have to learn to be poured into. Yeah. And for a child to consider me is an honor. And that's a reminder, like, hey, you got value out here, no matter what, because we all, as humans, we deal with struggles internally, and sometimes we feel as if we're not meeting the mark. But even that physical representation allows you to remember that there's somebody out there who still values you, and make sure that you reach out, man. I've been with my mentee for 15 years now. And he's graduated high school. He went to the Army. He's working he was a firefighter. Now he's working as an EMT, getting his certification. Man, I'm so proud of him. And just thinking about all the pictures and all the things that we've walked through in these 15 years. He still calls me for advice to this day. So I really like that. I like that.
Yeah. So it was just something I had to do. But I want you to take a moment and share, if you could say one thing to your younger self, knowing what you know now, what would it be?
I would tell myself, it's okay. You are more special and more you have so much more and more loved and more supported than you could ever imagine. People love you for you, not for what you can do, not for how you can make anybody feel, but they love and appreciate you for being yourself. So live in that, stand in that. Don't allow a space of trying to be a facade or trying to be what other people want you to be. Mm-hmm. Don't fall into those narratives. Stand boldly on who God has called you to be, and know that through that faith and that obedience, you will be blessed. And it's beautiful on this side. And the things that you go through, the things that you dealt with, you may not understand them, but just know, continuing to walk in that space and trust that light is on the other side and all things will be revealed. The more that you tap into God, the more that you tap into being your authentic self, and the more that you begin to pour out into the community, the answers will be revealed.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Tell the people where they can reach you, where they can find you, as they would like to connect. Okay,
awesome. Once again, everybody, my name is Damani Anderson, known as my Big Black Therapist on Instagram, Facebook. My website is www.mybigbblacktherapist.com. It's not my big back therapist. It's my big black therapist, because everybody got jokes. Some people, you big back. Okay. That's all well and good, but it's my big black therapist, BLACK therapist.com. You can find me on there. Also, if for those who might not notice, I have a sweatshirt on right now. It's called I am a member. Okay, it's this side. I am the resident therapist for an organization called the Daddy Stroller Social Club. You can follow them on social media. It was a club or organization made for fathers, for fatherhood. The founder, by the name of Calvin Bridgewater, had his daughter during COVID. Him and his wife had their child during COVID. And at one of the hospital interviews, at one of the meetings with the doctor, they started to express or describe postpartum depression. And while he was sitting there listening to his wife and them explaining the symptoms, he realized he had the same issues. So he took it upon himself to reach out to a few dads that had children and asked them to go to the park. He said, "Hey, fellas, man, let's just go to the park. Let's just walk around and connect. I've been going through some things." And it was at a time where the children were young, and they stayed out at the park for 3 hours just talking and connecting. And that blossomed over the past 3 to 4 years to a point where last year we had up to 250 dads come out to a park in the DFW area. And now we're in the space of actually expanding this organization across the nation. So we will be expanded in about 5 or 6 other cities. So please take a look at that website, Daddy Stroller Social Club. Follow them on Instagram at Daddy Stroller Social Club, and to find out if there's a chapter near you. If you're interested in starting a chapter for fathers, please just reach out. There's an application process. I myself am one of the ones that edit them and read them, as well as Calvin, and we could definitely get interviews to help fathers bring that love and bring that community to fathers around the nation. The goal is to be global, so we want to go everywhere. So, but those are places that you can mainly find me at. And like I mentioned, I do life coaching across globally. I do career coaching. I work for organizations doing leadership workshop trainings on authenticity, implicit biases, all of those things. So you can take a look at my website, got a free consultation, and click the link. And by all means, you can tap in with me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I have enjoyed our conversation, and you guys definitely tap in. He has a lot going on. You definitely want to stay connected. Remember, if you need coaching, ladies, for self-love, don't forget to hit me up at coaching@IamTammyNicole.com. As we always say, love yourself so much that the love from others is a bonus. Have a great Tuesday. Bye-bye.
That's a wrap on another episode of Loving Me Before I Love You. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a second to show your support by subscribing and leaving a positive rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Stay connected with Tammy. Make sure you're following her on Instagram and TikTok at Coach Tammy Nicole. If you like to work with Tammy or have any questions you'd like her to answer, please head over to www.IamTammyNicole.com. Until next time, always remember to love yourself so much that the love from others is a bonus.